After a weekend of diplomatic brinkmanship and sharp rhetoric, the government of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela has reversed a flight suspension and announced it will again accept deportation flights from the Donald Trump administration in the United States. The decision comes despite recent aggressive actions and warnings from Washington, including Trump's declaration that Venezuelan airspace should be considered closed in its entirety. On Tuesday, Maduro's government confirmed that at Washington's request, it had granted permission for U.S.-operated flights to resume delivering migrants deported from the United States to Venezuela. An advance flight plan filed by U.S.-based Eastern Airlines requested overflight and landing clearance, a request Venezuela's Foreign Affairs Ministry made public on Tuesday. Earlier this weekend, Caracas had suspended all such repatriation flights. The move followed Trump's declaration via social media calling for Venezuelan airspace to be regarded as completely closed, a warning aimed at airlines, pilots and traffickers amid increasing U.S. pressure on Maduro's government. In response to that threat, over a half-dozen international airlines had suspended flights to Venezuela, some citing safety concerns and advisories from the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. Venezuela, in turn, revoked the operating permits of 6 carriers, accusing them of aligning with what it termed a U.S.-led state terrorism campaign. But on Tuesday, the Venezuelan government announced that following a formal request from Washington, the deportation flights would resume. The resumption marks a rare moment of cooperation between Caracas and Washington, given weeks of escalating confrontation. Since early 2025, under pressure from the U.S., Maduro's government abandoned its long-standing refusal to accept deportees from the United States. This year, U.S.-operated flights, some run by contractors or state-linked carriers, repatriated over 13,000 Venezuelans on chartered flights operating roughly twice weekly. The resumed flights are part of a broader shift under the Trump administration's intensified immigration enforcement, which includes the revocation of temporary protected status previously available to many Venezuelan migrants. The first flight under the resumed schedule landed on Wednesday at Simón Bolívar International Airport near Caracas after departing from the United States. Caracas officials confirmed that the landing was permitted under the renewed arrangement. On the surface, the resumption of deportation flights appears to be a pragmatic accommodation by Venezuela to U.S. demands, one that eases an immediate humanitarian backlog and resolves a standoff over airspace. But the move unfolds against a backdrop of sharply heightened tensions. Earlier warnings from Washington had signaled possible military escalation. The United States had deployed naval and air assets in the Caribbean, part of a broader operation targeting alleged drug trafficking networks. The FAA itself had warned airlines to exercise caution over Venezuelan airspace, citing increased military activity and GPS disruptions. Furthermore, some flights had been diverted or cancelled after major airlines suspended operations to Venezuela, indicating real economic and reputational costs. For its part, Venezuela framed the resumption not as capitulation, but as cooperation on migration, even if under pressure. This highlights how migration has become a key bargaining chip in a wider geopolitical confrontation between the two countries. In granting clearance for the flights, Venezuela has signalled a willingness to uphold the new repatriation regime, at least for now. But the circumstances under which it reversed course suggest the agreement could remain fragile. The resumption of flights is more than a tactical decision. It reflects a larger shift in U.S.-Venezuela relations and migration policy. Earlier in 2025, under the second Trump presidency, the United States significantly increased deportations of Venezuelans, many of whom had been living in the country under temporary protections offered by previous administrations. The renewed repatriation flights effectively reverse a period during which many Venezuelans had sought refuge in the U.S. to escape economic collapse, insecurity, and political repression in their home country. And for Caracas, accepting the flights may smooth one diplomatic front, even as pressure mounts in others. Trump's assertion that Venezuelan airspace should be considered closed in its entirety raised serious legal and diplomatic questions. Sovereign airspace belongs to the nation under it, meaning only Venezuela can formally close it. Despite that, the warning prompted airlines to cancel or suspend flights, a de facto blockade. In response, Caracas revoked operating licenses for airlines that complied, calling the move aligned with state terrorism. By reinstating flight permissions for US-run deportation planes, Venezuela appears to be distinguishing between civilian aviation and forced migrant repatriation. That line, fragile and politically charged, may determine the durability of the resumption. For thousands of Venezuelans now living in the United States, many of whom may face deportation, the resumption of flights offers a route back home. But the return is far from a simple process of reintegration. Migrants face economic collapse, political instability, and uncertainty regarding their reception. In a 2025 overview of US-Venezuela relations, analysts note that the renewed repatriations form part of a broader policy of reverse migration, spurred by tightening asylum rules, loss of temporary protections, and increasing deportations. While the flights may ease administrative burdens on US authorities, the humanitarian and social risks for returnees remain considerable. Even as flights resume, risks remain high. The military deployments in the Caribbean around Venezuela, issued under what the US describes as anti-drug trafficking operations, continue to cast a shadow over any normal aviation activity. The FAA's prior warnings about GPS interference and the security environment have not been rescinded. Moreover, the legality and legitimacy of some US actions, including airstrikes on suspected narcotics smuggling vessels, have been questioned by international observers. The broader threat of land strikes or expanded military intervention also continues to loom. For now, deportation flights remain a rare pocket of cooperation between Washington and Caracas, but under extraordinary circumstances. Whether this fragile détente lasts depends on shifting strategic calculations in both capitals. Is the resumed deportation flight program durable? The resumption comes under US pressure and a formal request from Washington. Should political winds shift, for example, US priorities change, or Venezuela's government decides the arrangement is too risky, flights could again be suspended. How safe are returnees? Thousands have been flown back to Venezuela this year, but reintegration challenges, potential rights violations, and economic instability raise serious humanitarian concerns. Will international airlines resume full commercial service? Given the security environment, GPS interference warnings, and raised military presence around Venezuelan airspace, full civilian aviation remains precarious. The resumed flights pertain only to deportations, not regular commercial travel. The deal could signal a tactical thaw or be merely a temporary accommodation. The underlying geopolitical tension between the US and Venezuela remains high, especially with ongoing military operations and threats from Washington.